Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales. This is a podcast where we explore how the best B2B sales leaders make the complex simple, drive relationships and revenue, and generally elevate the sales profession. In this podcast, we're bringing together sales experts, thought leaders, top account executives, buyers, industry insiders, all to share their experiences and best practices for navigating the complex sales cycle. So whether you're a seasoned sales professional, a sales leader, or just starting out, you're going to find practical insights and actionable advice that you can apply to your own sales journey. Plus, we have a bit of fun. Welcome back to the show. We're continuing today with the next part of our interview with SaaS expert Jacco Van Der Kooij. We ended the last episode discussing the golden age of SaaS and where we're headed in the future. Buckle up and get ready to learn. What are some of the key stats that you're seeing? Because look at this, you can look at like the rule of 40, you could look at net revenue retention, all those things in terms of the stats that people were really highly focused on, getting them that multiple, getting them that investment and that type of thing. What type of stats are you recommending for sales teams and SaaS sales teams that they look out for in terms of this ongoing build, right? We're kind of a foundational build. Sounds like we're getting to a sustainable model, not a model that's predicated on 200% growth a year.
So we're coming out of I'll use the word scalable, sustainable, and durable. Scalable growth simply is, if I pour more money in it, will it grow? Not efficient. Is it efficient or effective? Will it grow, and will it grow at high velocity? So scalable growth is growth as a function of velocity. And that has been primarily in the golden age of SaaS between 2012 and 2022. That was the way we defined growth, scalable growth. Late 2019, or in the years of 2019, we realized that this was not sustainable. And so myself, I remember vividly, I presented at SaaS Talk in Dublin in late 2019, sustainable growth. Sustainable growth is a function of scalable growth, which is growth as a function of velocity, plus cost. Is it affordable? In other words, if I spend 2x, do I get 2x the growth, or do I only get 1.01x the growth? Of course, if I only get 1% of growth, but I spend twice as much on it, it's not sustainable. And I believe that if something is not sustainable, by definition, it is not scalable. And now we have durable growth. And durable growth has to do with, are you selling to the right customers? Are you establishing NRR over the long term, net revenue retention? In other words, does your customer keep growing along with you? And if your customer keeps growing along with you, you have durable growth. But if you win lots of customers, but they don't grow with you from the expansion of them, then it's not durable, because you need to keep primarily driving growth from acquisition. Durable growth means that you have established a balance between acquisition, growth from acquisition, as well as growth from expansion. So these three terms we see that we're now growing to. And if we see where we're at today, we essentially are more on the trend of skipping the sustainable growth and going straight to durable growth. Why? Sustainable growth was supposed to come in 2019. The pandemic overruled it. And so now it's too late. It's not good enough to just have the right cost factor, whether we measure that in NRR or whatever.
The pandemic really artificially kept us at the sustainable growth phase.
Scalable growth. It kept us
at scalable growth. Scalable growth phase.
That's right. And so now what we see is we go to durable growth. And if we need to grow from customers that expand. What we commonly see, it is important for the listeners to realize this. What we need beyond, what I'm about to say is beyond 10 million in recurring revenue. Things before 10 million in recurring revenue are not going to change that much. Why? It's entrepreneurial. You need to make your product work. You need to achieve product market fit and so on. But once you are starting to hit 5 million, 6 million, $7 million, things start to break down. And where it starts to break down is as follows. When you grow a company through $5 million and beyond, you generally get an A round. And an A round generally is used to hire more people. And so seed round typically is 10 people. An A round generally gets you into play when we're talking about after an A round, you go to about 50 people. After you get a B round, you generally grow to about 100 and 150 people. That means that we are growing rapidly our organization in an A round. We grow from 10 to 50 people. And then we move from 50 to 100, 150 people. Lots of people are being added right at around 5 million to about 20 million. And we're adding all these people without a known and proven process. So what happens if I'm launching and I'm hiring all these people and at the same time I have no proven process? I get chaos. Mm-hmm. What does this chaos ensues? And I need to, so this chaos start to ensue, right? So keep that in mind. Second thing, how did I achieve $5 million in growth? I achieved that because of a tremendous amount of superstars that I have. Superstars are what makes a company work to 5 million, make him to 8 to 10 million. Superstar behavior is fantastic. These are the real entrepreneurs. These are the founders, the CEOs, that first generation of sales person, right? The first engineers. These are the superstars. And so in companies between 5 and 10 million or right around, I have a huge amount of superstars, compared to the overall population, right? But the problem with superstars is they resent processes because it slows them down. And so all the way up to $5 to $10 million, I am creating this high, rapid, extreme access, everybody happy based on superstars. And what do? We celebrate superstars. We give them more compensation, more stock. We put, we tell them and we talk about them at the quarterly, monthly meetings, the top performers. And so we completely nurture this behavior of superstar because that's what got us to work, to make all this work. What got us here, unfortunately, will not get us where we're going. What got us to that point of superstars, that anti-process, that extreme entrepreneurial behavior, which is needed to get to $5 to $10 million. Suddenly, when I get an A round and when I get $10 million on average, or a B round, in which sometimes the averages in 2021 were $30 million, they probably have come down a little bit. What do I do with all that money? Well, my venture capitalist, the board member will tell me, hire more people, go faster, deploy more marketing, invest more in marketing, invest in more salespeople. So they are telling me, while I am still floating on the superstar culture, and while I'm flushed with cash at this point, they tell me hire more people. So I have a lack of a process, driven by superstars who resent process, infused by an unlimited amount of funding, of which my board members tell me essentially hire more people. This creates a volatile circumstance. This creates that chaos that sits right between A and B, which often means that people start to not collaborate with each other. The VP of sales and the VP of marketing chasm starts to occur. The VP of sales with the VP of at that point in time, the head of customer success start to occur, right? Where a VP of sales says to the customer success, just don't lose my deals. I won these deals. Why do you keep losing them, right? Churn is a metric that indicates that. This entire world of chaos occurs. And in that world of chaos, only a few. It is 1 out of every 50 companies that makes it. Is a little bit more, I think 1.6. I probably should point that 2 out of 50 companies will make it to a successful IPO. To make it to an IPO. And out of every 10 companies that make it to IPO, only 1 out of 10 public SaaS companies actually becomes economically a success, that they end up in a profitable scenario. That means what? 0.2 out of 50, 2 out of 500, 1 out of 250 companies are making it into successful. Wow. This is all because of the lack of process, the lack of operating model, and as a result, all these things, the causes. And when you look at these successful SaaS companies, it's no mistake what you look at them. They all say the same thing: customer-driven, process-centric, high quality of skill training in the organization, right? Like it's the same thing. It's what agile development does. It's what TQM does. It's what all these process improvement companies are constantly preaching to us, but we're not adhering to it because we think that we're painting Picassos, where you've built a company that's simply painting apartment complexes, right? That's what you're doing.
There should be a mandatory pause between A and B. Like I come out I have a sales rep that recently came with us, and he was giving me a story, like from the other side, from the salesperson's perspective, right, of going to a funding company exactly at the stage that you require. And he said it is chaos. It's that impact. Okay, just more feet on the street, more feet on the street, more feet on the street. But they, in the same type, they implemented 3 different CRMs over the course of a year and a half because they didn't know what worked. They threw a bunch of tools at it. So it leaves a salesperson grasping at straws and saying, okay, I'm just going to go out and do my own thing. Right?
So,
that's common.
Okay, but how can it be? And before you answer, I'm going to ask the audience to contemplate the following. How can it be that only 2 out of 50 companies can be successful, of which all 50 companies receive, in this case, a significant A round, right, from a meaningful investor, right? An investor that is often stacked with talent, with experience. These are, people that know how to calculate. That's absolutely not an issue, right? The companies that they fund are stacked with talent, some of the best and smartest people in the world, right? Getting access to an unlimited amount of resources in most cases. How can it be that only 2 out of 50 become successful? Ask yourself this. How can that be? That is always coming down to the same thing. What got you here won't get you there. Everybody that up to that point has been successful by resisting process. Mm-hmm. When you found a company, you left the company that was very process-driven in general. You came out of a market and you go, like, this takes way too long, right? When you're a VC, you go like, we need to uproot, we need to disrupt these enterprise-grade companies, which are all very process-driven, right? You file your expense report on a Friday, right? Like with the receipt, and if not, you're flagged. You spend like 16 emails on trying to get them to explain that, anyway, you know the drill. And so so everybody has historically resisted process across this entire journey. And they've all constantly been proven right. By the time a founder gets his or her, let's say $10 million A round, they have defied all the odds. They have overcome the advice of many of their best friends, their family members, who all said they were not going to end up in anything. And so up to that point, every time somebody told them what to do and how to do it, they defied that in generally. And as a result, they've become successful. And here at $10 million, we tell them, you got to go do what you hate doing and the reason why you started the company to achieve what you want to become, which is one of those companies. And this thing is just a mental block for most of these organizations. There's one more challenge, and I'll open it, normally, under normal circumstances, companies, if you go back 20 years, a company would grow to, under normal circumstances, it would grow to about $100 million, and it would take 20, 30, 40 years. I was raised in Philips. Philips is a 100+ year company. I think they're at this point 125 years. Mm-hmm. These long enterprises achieved success over decades. And so most companies, even if you today look at, like companies like Google, they're around for like decades, right? They're not like, oh, they were funded a few years ago. And so it takes company normally 40 years to, let's say, achieve $100, $200 million in revenue. In 40 years, they often work off, employees that stay with the company 3 to 4 years. When I came at Philips, they told you, you're going to be doing the job for 5 years. The first year, we invest in you. The second year, we expect you, to start contributing. Your third year, you're really productive. We actually make money on you. Your fourth year, you'll probably start to look for your next year. And in your 5th year, you'll transition to your next job. And so very common, they kept the same rhythm that you had from schools every 4 years, every 4 years, every 4 years. You go into this 5-year cycle. What we do at startups, we brought down that 5-year cycle on average to 10 years. Some go over 12, 13 years. High flyers, well, I'd argue whether they're high flyers, but some companies go faster, 6, 7, 8 years, but it's 10 years. Now, in those 10 years, as company progress through that, let me ask you, who is the most important person in a company at about $1 million revenue, to get the company to $1 million revenue? Who's the most important person?
CEO.
CEO or founder, right? Often the same way, right? Okay. At 5 to 10 million, who is the most important person that takes me to $5 to $10 million?
Head of sales and marketing.
Head of sales. generally, right? Now, if I get to $10 million, $10 to $20 million, who becomes the most important person at that particular point in time?
COO operations.
COO operation, I would shift it out a little bit. I would put the VP of marketing in there first. First, the deals come in, then the leads come in, right? And so I go from founder, be very responsible, top salesperson, marketing, CMO comes in. Then I probably somewhere along the line, COO, we skip the entire customer success person. They never become really important. Unfortunately, this pains me to say, but that's the case. And then somewhere along the line, we switch potentially to the CFO as we go public, right? And as we ramp up. All this in a span of 10 years. If you map that out, that means that the company approximately is dependent on a new lead dog every 18 months, right? Every 18 months we shift.
Wow.
Do you think that the person who is the previous lead dog likes the fact that we're switching to a new lead dog? No. Do you think that the VP of sales, who took so much effort to accumulate not only all these customers, often personal wealth in the process because of the commission checks, do you think they go okay, it's okay, I now need to give up and make the CMO a success? They're not thinking about that. Do you think that the CMO goes okay. CMO and the VP of sales go, let's make room on the table for the head of customer success and share our wealth with it? Of course not. And so as the company grows through these stages, these executives and the functions that they represent, the department, start to bite each other. They start to steal from each other, which is only contributing to it. Why? Because 18 months is not a long enough cycle for an executive to stay there. They are used to staying there for 2 to 3 to 4 years, right? And so after 18 months, with the tenure nowadays being 18 to 24 months, they're so afraid of the job that they're being pushed out of the job that they got. And often the contracts do not honor that, right? 3 months pay at the most, maybe a couple of weeks. So this entire system is still built along outside and outdated systems. And here we have executives competing, attributing to this enormous chaos that sits right between a company when they are between 10, 20, $30 million. Executives are biting each other. I got no process. I got a high growth people. I got unlimited funding, dependent on tool structure, right? And I got no skill level. That's your problem. That's why
you have blown my mind. I've been working with SaaS and startup companies since 2007 is when I started a business that we would do sales as a service for these organizations. But what you just described there in 4 minutes sums up how, looking at these companies and how you would see the interplay and the interconnectedness of it. You're dead on. I think you can absolutely tell that you've been in this world for a long time, but how do you deal with that?
How do you fix it?
How do you fix it?
Yeah. The fix is known. There's no difference than what I'm about to tell you is as simple as ABC, as I want to say as pie, but I'm telling you, making good pie is not simple. So, okay. But it's simple, okay? And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to lead with the conclusion. You need to have a methodology that is customer centric, aka the methodology needs to be on delivering the customer's outcome. Number one. Number two, you need to make sure that you have a common language that people speak with each other, so that everybody in the organization speaks the same language. And number three, you need to make sure that you act and behave and are a data-driven company, and that by itself is a loaded term, but you need to act and behave on data, not on opinions and on what we see on stages, and not being influenced by these trade shows or workshops where, some joker who has been successful in some form or shape, rightfully so, that's not the point, but is telling everybody else to go that way. And then we all that's not how it works. Okay. So number one, customer-centric. You need to learn early on in a company, in a recurring revenue company, that growth is a result of recurring revenue. The more recurring revenue I have, the faster I grow, because the less I need to depend on winning new acquisition deals, right? And so, but recurring revenue itself is not the goal that we seek. Recurring revenue is a result of something. And it's very simple what it's a result of: recurring impact. If Netflix doesn't give me new TV shows and I keep watching the same TV shows, then sooner or later, I'm going to unplug from Netflix and I'm going to move to a different network. My kids are out of the house and I am coming up to the point that I'm unplugging Disney. I don't need it any longer because the TV shows that it brings to me is no longer valuable. And, I'm not going to watch the Star Wars episodes for another. I've been overwhelmed with the Marvel. So no recurring impact, no recurring revenue. If I know that recurring revenue is the result of recurring impact, then my goal of the entire organization should be to achieve recurring impact. What is recurring impact? Recurring impact is an outcome. Let me explain to you what the difference is. If I buy a product, like I buy a car, if I want to have a car that takes me to the office, I can buy a car. I still need to pay road taxes. I need to drive myself, park myself, and pay an enormous amount of parking, gas, everything, right? The whole thing. I need to do it. That is when you buy value. Value is the promise that it can create impact. If I get an Uber, I get impact. I pay to the person to drop me as close to the destination as possible within the shortest allotted of time. I'm not paying for the radio. I'm not paying for the temperature. I'm not paying for all the other things. They are secondary. I'm paying for one thing. Drop me off at the set time at the set place. That's impact. Impact is what your customer gets out of the product that they buy from you, for which you are promising them value. Hence the reason value proposal, value selling. You're selling a promise that they can. And the entire enterprise world, which is the entire SaaS software world, which is based on the historic enterprise sales world, a perpetual software world, says, I sell you the product, the value is here, you need to get the customer responsible for the impact. And so hence, we only look at onboarding churn as the major reason of churn. We are never reporting to the customer back which impact they get. And as the saying goes, the first principle of this, step number one, how do I create a common methodology? Create a common methodology by being impact-centric. Impact-centric is based on the first principle of recurring revenue. And that is recurring revenue is a result of recurring impact. Therefore, the entire organization must put itself into the service of helping a customer achieve that impact. That's it. You need to find, that means that you need the customer to get, if I go back from that point, that means I get to the customer, I need to report the customer first, recurring impact, right? Report like Slack does every month. They send me a report what the impact is that I get out of Slack. That means they need to get me to first impact. That means that the sales organization need to sell against impact. That means that my prospectors need to prospect on impact. And that means that my lead generation, my marketing, my brand and awareness all should be focused around that impact that the customer at the back end gets. The entire organization needs to be unified around customer impact. Number one. Number two, we need to speak a common language. So if sales hands off a customer, they need to say, this is the customer situation. This is the pain that they're having. Therefore, this is the impact that they want by set date. As a result, all these people were involved in the decision. We call this spiced. Situation, pain, what's the impact? Critical event is the form of time, and D, the decision. What we want is a salesperson to hand off to the customer success rep what it is that this deal does. And as if the customer success onboarding rep now picks up the phone and says to the customer, just spoke to the person who sold this to you, and they told me this was your situation, this was your pain, this was your impact, blah, blah, blah. Then the customer goes like, exactly. Or they may say, things have changed here. The date has shifted. I now need a different impact. But you got a framework. That framework, every organization, whether you build a Ford car, whether you walk into a hospital, when you walk into a hospital, it's all about heart rate, blood pressure, your temperature, right? This is like anywhere you go into an emergency room, there will be the same metrics that they take on, and that becomes the language how they start communicating between doctors and between emergency room, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Number one was methodology. Number two was a common language. Do we all speak the same language? And number three, it needs to be data-centric. Are we measuring things? The reason why marketing and sales often do not get along is because the data is wrong, because we define MQL, marketing qualified lead, and like an opportunity in two domains. One works in the opportunity and the qualified opportunity domains, and the other works in a marketing qualified lead, sales qualified lead, right? And then somewhere in here, these two do not communicate the same language. When we translate that back to data, to a data model, we can see that it normalizes communication, right? And often we use that as a step. We say, okay, let's see what we got. This data model needs to be understood that today's marketing and sales funnel, which acts and behaves as a data model, is an incomplete view of the customer journey. It omits the entirety of the part where recurring impact is delivered, achieved, and paid against. It only goes in many cases up to, at best, onboarding. And so what we have deployed and we have made available via the scienceofrevenue.com, a new model called the bow tie. And that bow tie takes as much focus and detail in the data model on what happens after the deal close, or as we call it, the mutual commit. Since the market and sales funnel provides an incomplete view because the recurring revenue taking place outside of the purview of the marketing and sales funnel, it means that in the executive boardroom, it gets less attention. Let me give you a practical example. We help numerous times. In this case, 2 years ago, I helped a large customer. They went public on I think they were slated to go public, $7 billion. They on their first day, they got $70 billion valuation. But something was amiss. We knew it, and today that is reflected in some of their stock price. What was amiss is that they did not really have that complete view. They were completely focused on growth through acquisition, which is a very common mistake. And so they stuck with acquisition. Now, they grew a little bit in expansion, but as many of you may know, may have heard before, they used the sellers to expand the deal. So the seller would close the initial deal and then would be held responsible for the renewal and the expansion in subsequent years, which seems logical because you maintain a relationship. The problem is that the cost of acquisition is significantly higher than the cost of tradition of expansion. And when I start moving my salespeople to do the expansion, that means that my cost of expansion, which normally is about 1/6 to 1/4 of the price, suddenly becomes equally that of acquisition. That means that my cost of revenue growth goes super high. And as a result, this particular company, I noticed it the other day, the last quarterly report operates 67% of their annual growth is being paid for by marketing sales. So they invest 67% of all their annual revenue goes to marketing and sales each year. That's enormous.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of how I found that. Look at the deck, the quarterly deck. Let's call it the 50-slide deck. Mm-hmm. And in that 50-slide deck, what do you think we're going to talk about? What is the number one thing in an organization like that growth from acquisition? What are slide 1 to 10 talk about? What do you think, Paul? Pipeline. And what sits at the top of the pipeline?
Marketing,
leads. Mm-hmm. So 10 slides about where the leads came from, okay? Then add another 20 slides on which segment, SMB, mid-market, enterprise, conversion rate, win rates, go deeper, which salesperson closes which, go on quota performance, on target performance, quota plan. Okay, I'm 30 slides deep into this deck, right? 30 slides. Growth, where growth comes from, what we need to do, another 10 slides. Okay, 5 slides. I may give them too much effort down here. 5 to 6 slides at most on customer success and impact. So what this particular customer says is, no, of course we talk about customer success and we have a person assigned to customer success. And I go okay, where in the deck? Well, at the back of the deck. And how long is your meeting? Well, 90 minutes. And how often, you get at the end of that deck. And don't get me wrong, out of the team of 20 executives that are responsible for revenue at the company that size, 17 are acquisition and 3 are expansion based, right? So the 17 have a lot more to talk about. And so by the time we get to the customer success part, it is an afterthought. Mm-hmm. It is an afterthought, right? This is where recurring impact takes place. This is where the entire growth, this is where you learn which are your right customers. This is where you learn which customers want to expand. And so you see, you can put back to the front end of the marketing and you can connect these two and you go this is amazing. And what do? It sits at the back of the deck. That is the reason why only 1 out of 10 public SaaS companies are able to become successful because they don't understand they need to grow to an impact-centric organization. Again, I'll say it again what these three things are. Just to number one thing, you got to have a customer-centric methodology. It means impact-based. Number two, you got to have a common language that everybody in the organization speaks. In this case, I use SPICE. And number three, you got to use a data model in order to make sure that we measure and stop at the right point and that we let data do the talking. So we're not in each other's hair. Simply, if the leads are bad quality, we can all the way trace it back to where they came from. And for that, we use a more comprehensive model, not the marketing and sales funnel. We use the bow tie. And the bow tie is just a continuation. We've all made this available, the public domain under the scienceofrevenue.com. We believe that this is important for, like a standard for all us to have. It's available under Creative Commons license, and that is only to protect it from any joker out there trying to monetize it. I feel like it's a national park that we have established. And like a national park, we want it to be free and accessible for the rest of our lifetimes. So nobody can start putting up, like gates and start charging fees and put, like cookies on it and pixels, stuff like that. We really wanted to contribute that to the market. So that's where we're at. We call all this revenue architecture. To pitch briefly Winning by Design, in this, Winning by Design is this company that delivers this. We have a course that teaches all of this called Revenue Architecture. Revenue Architecture is a renowned class. It's our number one class. We train about 100 revenue architects a month these days. Many well-known institutions like Pavilion are using this as the cornerstone of their growth. So if you're a member of Pavilion, you get complimentary access to this. And I'm coming out of a new book. The early version of this book is called The SaaS Sales Method. That is available per today on Amazon. But if you can wait, because in June, the new book is coming out. It's called Recurring Revenue Architecture. And it's all about how you properly design and architect these services. As you can tell, as the founder of this company, I do this all pure with passion, floating on passion, and sharing this with your audience, for which I am grateful that you give me the opportunity.
Absolutely. This has been a masterclass. So I've taken like 7 pages of notes. I still love my pen and paper, and I have it. And I know everybody that's listening should be doing the exact same thing. One of the things I'll point to, this idea of taking the CS lead we talked about earlier, and I know we're going to wrap up, but bringing them earlier into that conversation about when they are the main person, right? Driving that, because that seems so important that for SaaS companies that the customer experience is just absolutely focused. Maybe I can have you on next time and we could talk about the bow tie more and driving impact.
Remember I said that earlier on we were spending money on nice fleece shirts, right? Like Arc'teryx, beautiful shirts, and not spending money on books, right?
Yep.
If we keep thinking of customer success as an organization that is responsible to avoid churn, that we're going to measure in the number of hearts they get, aka Net Promoter Score, right? Then we don't have the right people that are part of this conversation. The switch to all this is when we are starting to see that the role of customer success is that of a revenue function. We are now seeing companies like Catalyst, ourselves, and others, like more and more teaching organizations. Your customer success organization is a revenue organization, money-centric, not love-centric with hearts. They're not there to harvest 5 likes or 5 stars or whatever it is. That's not what they do. Your companies are telling you how much they like your product based on their expenditure profile. That's what the real data is. And all that other stuff is also important. I don't want to take away from Net Promoter Score. I think we still should measure that, but that is a secondary metric. And if we keep hanging on to that in today's world, we are missing the opportunity. And as a result, these customer success organizations are not going to be taken seriously. And they're always going to remain in the last slides of the deck, where I believe we should actually start with them and say like, hey, what did we learn from our customers? Which ones are growing? And then propagate that all the way back up with the lead flow, and particularly cold outbound based lead flow being the last topic to talk about. And for those of you who are listeners, we all know And well, I should say it for myself. I should speak for myself and then see how much is. At Winning by Design, the top 3 ways of leads generated. Number 1, people talk about us because we did a good job in the previous job, right? Like we did a good job and they talk about us. Number 2, we provide workshops. We educate on this stuff, right? And number 3, our YouTube videos and books. In other words, knowledge, insights. This is the way how enterprise sales businesses grow. And SaaS is a derivative of enterprise sales. This is what you grow. So why am I spending all the time on how much do I spend on SEO, search terms, websites, landing pages, and so on? Like, of course, when I give a word of mouth referral, that person is going to go to our website and they may sign in as an inbound, right? But when you ask and trace them back, they always heard from you somewhere, which happens at the back end. Therefore, it's way better to focus on that back end. Well, with that said, I hope that we have your listeners lots to talk about.
Absolutely. No, this has been fantastic. And I think, I can't wait for the next time. So with that said, how do people find Winning by Design and you specifically? Just want to make sure that they're going to want to reach out.
Sure. Winning by Design is a consulting firm that specializes 100% in recurring revenue for B2B companies and 100% focused on the go-to-market function. So we don't do product management and engineering. We focus on marketing, sales, and customer success in short. And what we help companies to do is assess and design where they're at through our consulting business. We then train, provide playbooks, instrument through tools such as your own tools. We instrument that to make sure that they achieve recurring revenue. And we are very successful for companies that grow from 10 million to about $250 million in recurring revenue, ramping them up to go IPO, right? And then we have, like renowned companies that we have that you hear us talk about are companies like Dropbox and DocuSign, companies like that. We've helped them, in the later stages. We call those the grown-up stages. You can find myself on LinkedIn, simple enough, Jacco. And like in most cases, due to the unique name Jacco, you only have to type in Jacco and sales, and you'll get plenty of this. If you seek out and want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I always love to do that. But please mention this session. Please say in follow-up to this particular session, because I get so many requests, and due to the onslaught of AI and people not having a real profile, I need to know if you are real. I love to connect with you if you're real. That's not the problem. But my network is still valuable to me, so I want to make sure that it's only true people and not the fake ones.
Fantastic.
May I ask you one thing, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. At the outcome of that, what are a few, say maybe 1, 2, or 3 at most takeaways? What did you pick up today that stood out to you?
Number 1, the history of how SaaS has changed and the impact of what that means to where we are right now, which is, I would say, this age of durable growth, and how we focus on durable growth, which CS driven. And I took sales, when we're talking sales impact and acquisition, we need to drive talent and training really at the heart of that. So taking unskilled to skilled, right? So that to me ties really highly to the durable growth theme, where I think SaaS has to go, and SaaS sales truly has to go to be relevant. The second, let me look in my notes. The second is continual impact. Those 2 words, continual impact, and what we have to strive for as an organization. And that starts at the salesperson selling with impact, right? So SaaS companies I see all the time, making the mistake of selling features and benefits. And what you end up getting caught on when you're in that features and benefits conversation is you get caught at the end of the funnel in a battle for clicks, and with a battle with the unicorns out there that have somehow gone from 0 to 100 million quickly. But when you're selling impacts, you can have a conversation at the strategic level. So that's what I took from that. And I think the third is really just process is how we process. And I tie that to methodology. You tie that to methodology really well. And what you're talking about is having that methodology, that language that encompasses, that's all encompassing and connects with the processes that you run within your business. But that has to start for growth, that has to start earlier, right? It has to start with founders being able to say, I'm a superstar and I have, 10 superstars on the team, but these superstars need to have at least a base. We have to work with them at least on a base process for expansion. Else, once we get to that 10, we're reinventing everything. So those three things they really stuck with me. And I think they're going to stick with it. Hopefully I said them the right way, because I think they're going to stick with the users too.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, yeah, if the users reach out to me, I love to hear from them what their takeaways are. We're in a weird spot in the world right now. And there's few things that we can do about, like what's going on a geopolitical stage. What we can do with sales and with many of the people listening to here is like, look, much of this happens through human communications. Marketing, sales, and customer success is all about human communications. In the end, we still live. It doesn't matter how much ChatGPT, whether we're on ChatGPT 4, 5, 6, or whatever AGI, advanced generative bots are going into the future. We're going to come back to the soul truth of it all, again and again. This is about humans communicating with humans. This is what we seek. This is what we ache for. This is also the area of the biggest area of conflict in the world. So if we just communicate kindly, help each other, and instead of trying to go for the dollar, right, the good old mighty green dollar, and instead of help people achieve that impact, that growth, and grow together rather than grow ourselves, instead of calling it closing, we say it's mutual commit. We're going together in this, right? I give you my software, you give me your money, and together we're going to try to grow. If we think of it all, then I know it's not a big piece of the world that we can control, but we control a little piece. And if that little piece comes across with kindness and with the goal to achieve both, become better out of this, hey, there's millions of salespeople in the world. That means that SaaS can change the world. We already see it has, but I think it can go further. That's what excites me every day. That's why I keep writing books. That's why I keep talking about it, sharing that with other experts in the field like yourselves and enthusiasts that are listening to us. The job ain't done. The SaaS, we ended the decade of great growth. That's fantastic. That fueled it. On to the next decade. A decade where we will help our customers to achieve what we promised in the first decade.
I love it. Let's make it happen together, Jacco. I'm on board.
Thank you.
I'm on board. Thank you so much. And with that, everybody, we are going to sign off for today. Thank you so much. Listen to the Art and Science of Complex Sales. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to the Art and Science of Complex Sales. This podcast is sponsored by Membrane and our partners from around the globe. Here at Membrane, we believe that B2B sales is at a crossroads. Due to decades of quantity-based prospecting, information overload, and really a shift towards efficiency over service and pitching over leadership in sales, customers are saying enough is enough. They're tuning out average performers and choosing to take most of the buying journey on their own. This results in up and down sales results, forecasts that are all over the place, and salespeople that are half committed due to the fact that they're having poor results and they have an inability to truly connect with customers. We believe the road successful companies are taking to combat this is threefold. Number one, training to create leaders and executives across all areas of the team with strong habits and sales methodologies that bring value. Number two, technology that focuses and helps a salesperson succeed and reinforces great habits rather than wasting their time on filling out fields for reporting or wasting their time on spamming customers that have no interest in ever buying. Third, talent. And I'm talking about talent that's empowered and emboldened to make a difference for their customers and their companies. So where are you on that journey? Membrane and our network of partners across the globe are here to help and to elevate the sales profession. We streamline critical technology by combining CRM, training and enablement, and more into one seamless platform. We drive best-in-class methodologies through our partners. They provide the top thought leadership methodologies and resources from across the globe. Collective efforts are dedicated to recruiting, training, coaching, and empowering, and measuring the habits of the top teams in the world to ensure success. Join us at membrane.com to learn more. And thank you so much for listening.